it's over a minute now, and no one has arrived. It still says 0 concurrent viewers. Things are a little slow today, I suppose. But I have been busy. Earlier, I was on the Amy Newman show, talking about the Book of Numbers. I thought I made an excellent point, but I won't tell you what it is now, but you should be able to find it on my blog. I have 2, actually I have 3, maybe 4. But the radicalized rabbi would mention my take on Moses and the spies. Also, I have been partying with the others on the Discord channel of Amy Newman. And in a way it's quite educational, psychologically anyway, even if it's not one of the most philosophically inclined places. We did even talk about valid and sound arguments. And hope to arrange a further debate on whether Christianity is idolatry. And then I discussed Ed Dutton. You know when you think, I'm sure this person is aware of me, and I knew that I had sent him at least 1 email, and then I did a search on my email and I discovered that not only had I sent him 1 email, I sent him a whole bunch of emails. He ignored all of them, of course. But the point was that I copied in 2 other people on those emails in 2019, and I still have them, and those people were Mark Collett and Millennial Rose. Of course I could say, oh, we receive so many emails, we don't respond. We couldn't possibly respond to every single one of them because we're such busy, important YouTubers that we can't be expected to talk to the likes of you. And I'm sure Ed Dutton will use that excuse. But I've also asked a few other people who might be expected to have some interactions with Ed Dutton, and his response was that Ed really doesn't like dealing with people he can't easily dominate. And somebody else said, oh, what did he say? Words to that effect anyway, that he was a bit shy about his IQ. Now I'm a bit vague about my IQ, but I don't think anybody doubts my intelligence or the originality of my ideas and the sheer scale of their ambition. It makes them gasp and stretch their eyes, do they not, Christine Ramsey? Of course, Ed Dutton is very interested in my ideology, but he's pretending that he hasn't heard of secular Quranism, and it's like, of course he's heard of it. I know it gives nationalists the heebie-jeebies just thinking about it, and I've been promoting it since 2009. which was when I first blogged about it. And I did talk to Mark Collett in, I think, 2017. And before our conversation, Mark basically said, you can't talk about it, don't even mention it to me. And I didn't. I am a woman of my word, you know. But anyway, to suppose that the nationalist community was not aware of secular Quranism is frankly unbelievable. I know how small a community they are, and I cannot imagine that they would not be talking about me and my activities and my ideas and my way of argumentation. So this means that Millennial Woes and Mark Collett knew about secular Quranism. In fact, I know that although he didn't refer to me directly by name, actually he might have done. I think he did. Yes, he did mention me because he was complaining about me, and then he did one stream when he was actually talking about Islam and a Western version of it or something like that. Anyway, I did embed it in one of my blog posts, and thankfully I had the sense to transcribe what he actually said. So nobody, I know they will pretend never to have heard of me or secular Quranism, or, you know, I'm just such a insignificant person in nationalism. I'm not even white, and I'm only a civic nationalist. So utterly insignificant in the minds of the white man, obviously. But I'm the one with the ideas. I mean, what other ideas are there in nationalism other than accelerationism or voting for the Democrats-ism, the one that Richard Spencer was advocating? And talking about Richard Spencer, he's been quite complimentary about Islam. In fact, he was being so complimentary about Islam that that it knocked me over. And I thought maybe he was just going to go back on his word the way so many of these people with no principles do. But he didn't. He's with regard to Islam, Richard Spencer has said that, I can't even remember what he said, but I'll put the links up in the description after I finish the stream, so you can see for yourself what he actually said. Now, as you know, Ed Dutton streams with Richard Spencer, so there's just no way he could have not known about secular Quranism. So what they would have done was obviously agree not to speak of secular Quranism on any of their streams, to smother it at birth, to deprive it of the oxygen of publicity. But anyway, a few nationalists who are modest but thoughtful have over the years got to know me. They don't like secular Quranism, of course they don't, I understand. But they want one of the sort of, more intellectual members of the nationalist community to deal with my questions that they don't feel theologically qualified to deal with, because their degree was in something else, it's history rather, rather than theology, and we know that Ed Dutton has a degree in anthropology and theology. So he would be, I guess, the most qualified person in British nationalism to talk about these things. But he doesn't want to engage with me and pretends that I do not exist. But then it is only because he is intellectually insecure and doesn't want to deal with me in an honest and rational way. And with such leaders or thought leaders in nationalism, well, how can you win when people are so dishonest and such liars that they pretend something that is obviously not the case, particularly when they can so easily be found out. Copies of email can so easily be kept for oneself and be carbon copied for other people. So I have all the evidence that I have tried to communicate with Ed Dutton, and it wasn't just a one-off, so he could say, "Ooh, but I never received that email." It was a series of emails. You know my methods. I don't just let it go at one. And when I approach somebody, I make sure that they know that they have been approached. So they can't say, I never received her email. So we know, unfortunately, that Ed Dutton is a liar. Unfortunately, Ed Dutton is not the only liar. The people at the bottom are not that much better than the corrupt and incompetent politicians that they're always complaining about. So I'm afraid Western civilization is being sandwiched from the top and the bottom by corrupt and incompetent people who basically spend their lives denying truth, logic and morality. And also they rig the system. Obviously Ed Dutton knows that if he doesn't talk to me, then he won't be promoting my ideas. But what is it about my idea that is so terrible, if it is indeed the solution to the moral and political and social problems of the West? Surely it should be discussed or dismissed as foolishness if I've got anything wrong. It's been over 10 years, a whole decade of me being perfectly consistent, going from person to say, this is what I think the problem is. But they can't bring themselves to discuss it with me because somehow they think I'm unqualified, somehow they don't agree with my diagnosis of the disease. And they prefer to talk about blaming the Jews, closing down mosques, blaming everyone else but themselves or their ancestors for choosing the wrong religion or choosing the wrong political system and never questioning it and allowing the whole shebang to become some sacred cow that must not be slain because it has become part of what is sacred about British and Western identity. But what is sacred other than God or God's laws, if he does indeed exist? And if God's laws exist somewhere in Scripture, should that not be discussed? Now, I had another discussion earlier on Discord with a Christian who considers himself to be some sort of theologian, but he can't quite answer me this question of God's laws as far as a Christian is concerned. Now, we know that the Christian Bible consists of the Holy Book of Jews, the Torah, and, well, the rest of it. So collectively, the Old Testament is called the Tanakh by Judaism. And this is what is incorporated in the Christian Bible. They have the Old Testament and the New Testament. And my bone to pick with Christians is the way Christians harp on about their new covenant. They can never really say which bit is the new covenant. They talk about it as if it were already known and codified, but they have not codified it, have they? So this means that ask one Christian about the new covenant and he will give you a vague answer, and you ask another Christian what it might mean and he will give you another kind of vague answer that bears no relation at all to the answer of the first Christian you asked. It's a little like liberalism. So if you asked a liberal what the principles of liberalism are, you will find that no liberal intellectual will be able to agree on the principles of liberalism, which means that it is kaput, just like Christianity. And this means that both the moral and political system of the West have broken down, and it needs a replacement, and I have the very thing, secular Quranism. So what stops these Christians from accepting my diagnosis that Christianity is kaput? Pride, the deadly sin of pride. Dutton won't acknowledge my existence. By the way, you know this body language thing when they say a person is telling a lie when he looks left and telling the truth when he's thinking about something like that. Anyway, we've got it. We've got Dutton on video when asked a question by Duvid, whose stream it was, because Dutton appeared on Duvid's stream, and I was posting merrily in the chat, asking him questions that he completely ignored, and then Duvid, bless his cotton socks, asked Dutton if he'd heard of me, and there was this awkward pause, this shifty silence, and he looked shiftily to the left, or was it to the right? Well, you go to Duvid's stream and you have a look to see whether Dutton was looking to the left or to the right when he lied that he had never heard of me. So if he's so dishonest, what else might he be being dishonest about? And if he's this qualified anthropologist and theologian, then he should be able to discuss the points I wish to raise about Christianity. Let me check his qualifications. he has a Wikipedia entry, but I do not. I think I deserve it, but actually I recently discovered that somebody else was classifying secular Quranism as an ideology, so it means I am an ideology, which is great. Edward Dutton, author. Born 1980, is a British author known for writing controversial racialist articles for fringe far-right journals such as Mankind Quarterly and Open Psych. Dutton has authored books published at the Washington Summit Publishers operated by neo-Nazi Richard B. Spencer. I think, well, I can't prove it now, but Richard Spencer liked one of my tweets. I can't remember what it was all about now. Career. Dutton has a degree in theology from Durham University and a PhD in religious studies from the University of Aberdeen. Oh, it doesn't say anything about anthropology. I must have got confused. Actually, it does say that he's an Oh, no, there is another Edward Dutton, who is an anthropologist, but it's not the one that I'm thinking of, who lied that he knew nothing about me and had not heard of me. So with that kind of degree, we can deduce that he was aiming to become some kind of priest in the Anglican Church, I would have thought. So anyway, because of his racialism in his theories, he's quite popular with the far right. And since he's the leading light of British nationalism, British ethno-nationalism, I would have thought he might want to argue the toss with me. To continue with the Wikipedia entry, it says, Dutton has lectured in favour of ideas about race and intelligence, such as his belief that people with blonde hair and blue eyes have a higher intelligence, according to his theories in his book How to Judge People by What They Look Like. He has also stated that Black Lives Matter advocates are mentally ill, that Muslims have a natural tendency to want to commit genocide, and that left-handed people are paedophiles. Well, perhaps with such views, he may wish to avoid discussing anything with me at all. On 19th October 2019, Dutton has addressed the annual conference of the far-right Traditional Britain Group, where he argued that British inventions and genius placed them at the apex of civilization. Well, you can run out of steam, I suppose. The Muslims were supposed to be quite good at science and astronomy until their civilization crashed, presumably because they ignored their own rules. So it's very difficult when people just refuse to engage with you, but it is a kind of tactical disengagement. So we were talking in Discord about objective ways of determining who has won the debate any debate, and I was very keen on evolving rules. And what I'm going to do is actually get a transcript of that debate that I had with on the Amy Newman channel called Debate Me Bra, Theocracy, and I debated with Mark Reed, and there will be a transcript of it, and I'm basically going to count the number of sound arguments that I made, as opposed to the number, well, I'm going to count sound arguments from both of us, and I'm just going to award the prize to the person who made the most sound arguments. And I think it's going to be me. You're always welcome to conduct this exercise. What I'll do is obviously punctuate the transcript, because, as you know, they're not punctuated, and once they're punctuated, then they're broken up into sentences, and then from these sentences you will be able to find the sound arguments that Mark Reed and I made in our debate with each other. So we'll have a look at that, and then objectively determine who actually won the debate. And it should be more people who heard it, agreed with Mark because they were atheists, and people who agreed with me because they're secular Quranists, because obviously I'm at a great disadvantage because there are very few secular Quranists around. And back to Dutton, who is adopting the tactic of tactical disengagement. So I did for some reason we also discussed Premier League football, and uniting what do you call it, boxing titles. So the different belts, I suppose, that's what boxers have, and they're all WBA and whatever, WBC and that kind of thing. And when you won all of them, then you have to fight each one. I mean, it's just a way of making people look forward to the next match. And you could say that maybe the winner of all the boxing titles is indeed the world champion, but it could also be that the person who would have knocked out all the world champions of boxing is in fact somebody that all the champions refuse to fight, because they know they're going to lose, so they're just going to ignore the existence of this theoretical champion in order not to have to fight him. And I kind of feel that I'm in that position, really, because I don't think people really want to debate me, particularly the leading lights of British nationalism, people such as Dutton, whom I've heard doesn't particularly like engaging with people who are not immediately dominated by him. So he doesn't want to talk to people like that. He doesn't want to talk to people like me. I mean, he's not the only one who doesn't want to talk to me, of course. A lot of people don't want to talk to me. They don't want to engage with me because they don't want to give secular Quranism the oxygen of publicity. But that's really not an honourable tactic to adopt, is it? Because if you did really care about your country, and there are other solutions other than yours, you should be able to discuss them honestly and rationally, because it's an important topic. If your idea is not the best idea, then you should dump it, of course. And if my idea is so mad and silly, then obviously you can easily defeat it with facts and arguments. But what I have experienced is people just fleeing from me and pretending that I'm the mad and silly one because nobody likes me. But if liars who believe in nonsense run away from me, it can be deduced that they are not so strong in intellect and argument after all. That would be a sound basis for concluding that Ed Dutton is not the most intellectually honest person around. But he's not the only dishonest person around, of course. So here we have this problem of the entire body politic just rotten with dishonesty and dishonest people believing in nonsense. You're just not going to get anywhere with people like that are actually incapable of correcting themselves, because they are in fact neurotic, if not actually mad. So they think that a viable course of action is to ignore any solution that they dislike, which is infantile, obviously, and they think it's the correct way to conduct themselves as adult men who are supposedly concerned about their national interest. But maybe the whole purpose of Ed Dutton is to operate his YouTube channel. Maybe not so much YouTube. He just collects super chats on BitChute or Rumble or whatever, and that's his source of income. And he knows a lot of white people want to think that they're racially superior to any other race, and he just gives them more of the same thing, and that's his bread and butter. And he's not really interested in engaging with me, because then it would be bad for business if it had to be accepted that nobody has a right to racial supremacy, which is in any case only military supremacy, and military supremacy does not last, as we know from the Roman Empire. So any race is in theory capable of destroying itself through dysgenic policies. The Romans are now extinct, but probably Italians would be descendants of Romans. But Roman civilization officially ended when the barbarians invaded. So, with regard to civilization, we have to acknowledge that all civilizations need some kind of moral system to base their moral and legal political system on. And we know the Romans tried when they gave up their pagan religion for Christianity, and unfortunately that didn't help them. And so we have to ask ourselves whether if Islam had been around at the time of Constantine when he chose Christianity, whether Rome would have survived for longer. Of course we will never know, but at least the Romans had the excuse of saying that Islam was not available then. But I'm very confident that had Constantine been offered the choice of Islam, he would have used that rather than Christianity, because Christianity was basically half-baked. we know it was half-baked because Constantine had to call the Council of Nicaea, and he called it for the purpose of getting all these bishops to agree on Christian doctrine. That was the whole purpose of the Council of Nicaea, from which came the Nicene Creed. But even after taking all that trouble to get these bishops to come to Nicaea to agree on the Nicene Creed, which is the creed that states a belief that Jesus is God, there was a minority view at the Council of Nicaea, and that would be what subsequently came to be called the Arian heresy. So these are the people, these were the bishops who said, we don't think that Jesus is the co-equal of God. We think he's divine, but not the co-equal of God. So they were basically kicked around because Trinitarianism was a majority, and so Christians have been going with this doctrine for 2,000 years. The latter-day Arian heretics would be Jehovah's Witnesses. So if you wonder why Jehovah's Witnesses have always been kicked around, that's the reason. They were the minority, but they survived in one form or another. But anyway, it's all idolatry, because Judaism long ago said that it is idolatry to worship anything that isn't God. And if man is a creation of God, and Jesus was a man, then Jesus was part of God's creation and is not to be worshipped. And therefore Christians are guilty of idolatry. And if God exists, then Christians are in deep, deep trouble for their idolatry and blasphemy that has lasted 2,000 years. And that is why their civilization is crashing and burning. Or about to. And this is obviously a subject that Ed Dutton wishes to avoid because, I don't know, maybe he doesn't think any of his subscribers are Christian and don't care about these things anyway, or he might think it's a bit of a can of worms, and it's safer for him to pander to their preferences by endlessly talking about low IQ races and Muslims that have a natural tendency to want to commit genocide, and how left-handed people are paedophiles. So, and I think we can come to our conclusions about his motivations when he goes out of his way to avoid talking to me. But who else is worth talking to in British nationalism? Is there anybody honest and honourable in British nationalism? Or outside British nationalism? Peter Hitchens. Now, I've met him, but he's not going to be talking to me. Are there any public intellectuals prepared to talk to me? I don't think so. I'm still persona non grata, and they don't want me to come to the attention of anybody because they too want to suppress my ideas. So this is the kind of thing I'm dealing with. I just want you to know the mountain I have to climb, and now I'll read the chat. Rob asks, what did Ed Dutton lie about? He lied about not knowing who I am. He said he'd never heard of me, and this was in last year. That was a stream. I'm sure it was last year. Let me just check. Yeah, it was last year in November when he was on David's stream, and David asked him if he'd heard of me, and he looked shifty. He looked either to the left or to the right, and said he'd never heard of me. So Stephen James advises me to not pick on people like Ed Dutton. I think I have to, really. I mean, why would I be picking on somebody lower than me in the pecking order? I have to go to the top. I don't know who you mean by Petrarch or Pico. I don't need Ed Dutton to bite on my little worm, Stephen. It's enough that enough people know of the intellectual dishonesty of Ed Dutton. Rob says very sweetly that he wants me to have a Wikipedia entry. Years ago somebody was going to do that, but they deleted it for, I guess they don't want me to have a Wikipedia entry. But secular Quranism will be the justification of my having a Wikipedia entry. Otherwise I'm just I guess a failed political activist, a YouTuber, a blogger. But I like to think that I do advance nationalism by defining it and making it universal, because if nationalism is defined as government in the national interest, then anybody who lives under a government would want their government to govern in the national interest. Stephen James, I don't really know what you're trying to suggest to me. I know JF never turns down a debate, but then neither do I, so what's the problem? If people don't want to debate me, then it's difficult to get on, isn't it? So obviously the quickest way for me to come to the notice of people is to debate public intellectuals. But if they all collectively refuse to debate with me, then that would be a problem. You would expect liberal intellectuals to not wish to acknowledge my existence, but, well, if you're looking at nationalists who, should care about their nation and ask themselves what moral system is to be used to correct the errors of the past, then you would expect more concern and more urgency on the matter, but you don't, because they don't really care either. So I really don't know what else you're going to suggest to me, Stephen James. I think I've tried quite hard. Maybe you can have a word with Ed or whoever. But you see, that is precisely the problem, that nobody's able to to do the right thing. And what is the right thing? The right thing is to submit to truth, logic and morality. And that there are no intellectuals at all in British nationalism, are there? I'm the only one. I really am the only one with a new idea. Everyone else is sort of stuck in their rut of dreaming of pogrom, of... What else is there? Or asking for little things from the government that they know they're never going to get. So the only way forward, I think, is to shame all these so-called nationalists who are more interested in their YouTube careers than the national interest, and who are moral and intellectual cowards for refusing to discuss these things with me. But the interesting thing is that the religious community, Jews, rabbis, Muslims, that they're actually more prepared to discuss these things with me because, well, they don't like secular Quranism, they don't like my ideas, but they know that there's something there, and if they wish to challenge it, they would have to talk to me. But I think a few Muslims and Jews even see the potential of secular Quranism. They may, for their own reasons, not wish to engage with me because they don't want to lose the argument. And I've got it all sewn up anyway. So for Jews, I tell them that they have to teach Noahide laws properly, and they don't want to because they know they haven't taught it for the past 2,000 years. And if they claim they have, I would need some historic record of rabbis telling Christian leaders that their religion is idolatry and blasphemy, and if they're not quite that rude, then they might be asking Christian leaders how Christianity is not idolatry and blasphemy, and I'm saying it's not too late. Yom Kippur is coming up. It is not too late to atone for this omission. And to Christians I ask, how is Christianity not idolatry and blasphemy? And I'm not going to get an answer from them, and they will pretend that... What will they pretend? They'll pretend... I don't know, I think they'll just pretend not to hear. Now for Muslims, I'd have to say to them, when did you obey the command in chapter 18 verse 4 that commands you to admonish those who claim that God has begotten a son? And no historic event records this obedience to chapter 18 verse 4. So I've pretty much got it all sewn up. Obviously they may wish to pretend that I don't exist either. But those of you who care about the national interest would know that it is unsustainable to not have a functioning moral and legal political system, and it certainly won't be sustainable if you let only the incompetent and the corrupt run your government. So unless you're going to acknowledge that there is a problem, then you won't solve your problem, because the sick man must first acknowledge that he is sick before he will seek a cure and accept whatever doctor's advice that is to come. So this is all I have to say under an hour. Thank you all for listening.